Sociology of climate change. Climate change is often seen as a problem for scientists, environmentalists, or politicians, but in reality, it is deeply connected to society and how human beings live together. The sociology of climate change focuses on the social aspects of this global crisis. It tries to explain why climate change happens, how it affects different communities, and what social responses are possible. By looking at climate change through a sociological lens, we can see that it is not only about melting glaciers, rising temperatures, or extreme weather events, but also about inequality, power, values, lifestyles, and collective decisions made by societies across the globe. At its core, sociology teaches us that human behavior and social structures are central to understanding problems. Climate change is a direct result of human activities such as industrialization, deforestation, urbanization, and overconsumption of fossil fuels. These activities are not random, they are shaped by economic systems, cultural values, political priorities, and patterns of global development. For example, industrialization in Europe and North America during the last 2 centuries relied heavily on coal, oil, and gas. This created wealth and technological progress but also produced huge amounts of greenhouse gases that now affect the entire planet. From a sociological perspective, the responsibility for climate change is unevenly distributed, with wealthier nations historically contributing far more emissions than poorer nations. Another important sociological insight is that climate change does not affect everyone equally. While it is a global phenomenon, its consequences are often experienced most severely by vulnerable communities. Rising sea levels threaten small island nations, desertification destroys farmland in Africa, and floods displace millions in South Asia. Many of these populations have contributed very little to greenhouse gas emissions but bear the heaviest costs. This brings us to the concept of climate justice, which highlights the unequal distribution of both responsibility and suffering. Rich countries and wealthy individuals consume more energy, generate more pollution, and yet are better able to protect themselves against climate disasters through technology and resources. Poorer communities, on the other hand, are often left without sufficient infrastructure, healthcare, or government support to recover from climate shocks. Sociology also helps us analyze the cultural dimensions of climate change. Different societies interpret and respond to environmental risks in different ways. For instance, in some cultures, there is a strong belief in living harmoniously with nature, while in others there is more emphasis on human domination over the natural world. Media plays a powerful role in shaping how people think about climate change. News coverage, social media campaigns, and even movies and documentaries influence whether individuals see climate change as an urgent crisis or as something distant and uncertain. In some countries, climate change is politicized, with groups debating whether it is even real, despite overwhelming scientific evidence. This shows how social beliefs, ideologies, and communication shape the collective response to environmental threats. When we think about climate change solutions, sociology again becomes important. Governments and scientists can propose technological fixes such as renewable energy, electric vehicles, or carbon capture systems, but their success depends on social acceptance and collective behavior. For example, switching to renewable energy requires not only solar panels or wind turbines but also policies that support their development, citizens willing to change their consumption habits, and industries ready to restructure their production processes. Lifestyle changes such as reducing meat consumption, recycling, or using public transportation also require social motivation and cultural shifts. Sociology helps us understand why some people resist these changes, whether because of habits, economic barriers, or ideological beliefs. Another dimension is the role of global institutions and politics. Climate change negotiations such as the Paris Agreement show how nations attempt to cooperate on reducing emissions. However, the process is shaped by power dynamics. Wealthier nations often demand commitments from developing countries, while developing countries argue that they should not be forced to sacrifice economic growth when they have historically contributed far less to the problem. This negotiation reflects global inequalities and the tension between economic development and environmental sustainability. The sociology of climate change also studies the rise of social movements. Across the world, people have organized protests, campaigns, and advocacy groups demanding climate action. Youth movements such as Fridays for Future, led by students, are powerful examples of how civil society can pressure governments and corporations. These movements show that individuals and groups can challenge existing systems of power and demand a sustainable future. They also reveal how emotions such as fear, hope, anger, and solidarity motivate people to act collectively. Work and labor are also being transformed by climate change. As industries move toward cleaner technologies, new jobs are created in renewable energy, green construction, and sustainable farming. At the same time, workers in coal mining, oil drilling, and related industries may lose their jobs. This raises questions about social protection, retraining, and fairness in the transition to a low-carbon economy. Sociologists study how this just transition can be managed so that workers are not left behind. Finally, the sociology of climate change invites us to think about the future of human societies. If climate change continues unchecked, it could lead to massive migration, conflicts over water and land, and greater inequality between nations. But it could also inspire innovation, cooperation, and new ways of organizing societies around sustainability and fairness. The future depends not only on science and technology but also on collective human choices. In conclusion, climate change is not only an environmental problem but also a deeply social issue. It is linked to inequality, cultural values, politics, economics, and power. Sociology allows us to see the human side of this crisis and highlights that solutions must involve more than technology. They must include justice, cooperation, and social transformation. If we want a sustainable and fair world, we need to recognize that climate change challenges us not only to reduce emissions but also to rethink how societies are organized, how resources are shared, and how humans relate to nature. If you found this explanation useful and it helped you understand the sociology of climate change in simple terms, please like this video and subscribe to the channel so that you can get more content like this in the future. Your support means a lot and encourages us to keep making videos that explain complex ideas in a way that everyone can understand.